We are back. We're going to be checking out some more spooky comments or posts. Alright, we got to do this one again. What is a supernatural event that happened in your life that just cannot be explained? Freaking awesome. Alright, let's try this one. Q Warda. My cousin had struggled with depression his whole life, and a few years ago, things came to a head. He was 100% convinced that the only cure to his depression was suicide, that death was the only thing that would make him truly happy. We were close, so it hit pretty hard. After the funeral, my aunt told us that she had saw a helium-filled smiley face balloon kind of float in front of her, then stop, and it just kind of sat there for a minute. Then it flew up and away and out of sight on its own. When she told us this, we just kind of brushed it off as a coincidence, but it kept happening to her over the next couple weeks. We thought she was just recognizing patterns until I was at a music festival a few months later, and the exact same type of balloon, same color and everything, floated through my campsite and did the same thing where it stopped on its own, stared at me, then kind of bobbed and flew up and away. I'm not really a believer in ghosts and the like, but I'm convinced in some shape or form that was my cousin telling us that he was finally happy. Here's one. Something funny? I used to work at a Boy Scout camp. My personal cabin was the furthest away from the center of the camp, about 2 miles from everyone else. One night, I was walking down the trail at 3 a.m. Through the shadows, I saw a hand reach out to grab me. I panicked and took out my pocket knife and stabbed at it. Then silence. That hand was gone. My knife was still in the air. I ran as fast as I could, but to my cabin. Weird. One night, as I was walking my dog, he broke his leash. He instantly started to run completely scared in the dark, and I couldn't find him anymore. I searched for him all night until 3 a.m., but he disappeared. I walked back home very sad and told my mom that my dog disappeared. This night, my mom had a dream, and she saw in that dream where exactly was the dog. The next morning, I went to the place she saw in the dream, and damn, my dog was there. Nice. Shout out to Ryan and Shane. If you haven't watched the BuzzFeed Unsolved Network with those two, it is great. Let's try this. Amy Pinner. In 1973, I was working at a general store in Texas. I was reading a sci-fi novel at the counter. A horse wrangler had stopped by to get a pack of cigarettes. He asked if I believed in that stuff, referring to the book I was reading. I said it was fun reading. He told me that aliens are real. He had been a military police corporal at an Army Air Force base in New Mexico after the war, and that he had been at the site. He said that there were alien bodies that were recovered. I've always been a skeptic, but that's an interesting tidbit. Dense Bud. My grandpa was in Roswell because his family lives there. He worked on a military base there. Anyways, he told me about a spaceship that crashed, and everybody who lived in the area gathered around the crash site to see what it was. A guy picked up a piece of the foil/metallic sheet from the wreckage, then he stuck his knife through it. And when he pulled his knife out, the hole in the foil instantly went back to the natural state, no holes. Any and every material retrieved from the crash site were taken by an army facility. Or did they? Oh, nukes. Lou? Let's just say Lou. We're gonna go with that. I live in Idaho, and a lot of times at night, you can see what looks like stars ducking and waving around. They'll go higher up, then drop back down, zigzag, and blink different colors. I've looked up satellites and airplanes flying at night, and they acted nothing like that. My father got his binoculars out, and we all looked closer, and the stars are triangular, with a blinking light at each corner. Last year, my father saw what he thought was a kid flying a drone. But when he walked outside, the drone shot off into the air towards the mountains and disappeared over a field. I saw a similar object fly through the park across from my house, but it was gone by the time I ran over there. In both cases, the drone was triangular with a blinking light on each corner. Just like that, the stars. One time, there was a green shooting star that didn't explode. It just kind of went puff and faded out. You could even hear it going out. And it literally sounded like a small puff noise. I'm not saying holy she's aliens, but I am saying that this stuff is weird, and nothing I can find matches what I've been seeing. Alright, this one's from Thunderpants. I was in a boat at Loch Ness once, and the monster came up out of the water next to the boat. I leaned over and looked at him eye to eye. And just then he said, "I need about Trey Fitty." Classic. Man, it's nothing but Trey Fitty jokes. Antonio Kelly Sr. I and some of my family members saw something along the beach, not far from where they are back in 1999. What we saw was black, much longer, like a very big and long serpent. It swam by us about 10 feet away. Missum Enum Centenus 666. This ought to be good. I know exactly where they went. Just what little they said and what I saw gave it away for me. I'm sure anyone else watching this is familiar with the area will know as well. Back in 1992, I thought I saw something, and at the time, I knew good and well it wasn't normally what's seen from there. Then over time, I convinced myself it wasn't anything crazy, until I heard my cousin saw the same exact thing. We were on the Gulf Coast side. Gulf is home to many crazy animals. I don't know what the oil spill did to all of them though. I haven't been back since, so I don't really know what it has done to the mystery animals underwater there. It's enough of Nessie. Ooh, some Chupacabra. Ooh, let's see if there's any Chupacabras on here. About time. Frrrr, or F-E-R. This was big back in the 90s. I remember seeing in the news almost every week animals like horses, cows, mostly goats, being drained out of blood without any evidence. Chupacabra, or goat sucker, if you didn't know. Taylor. I saw a real-life Chupacabra. It looked just like the one at that timestamp. It somehow climbed, scurried up and over a 10-foot high fence. I saw it with my own 2 eyes in South Texas around 4 years ago. It happened about a half hour south of San Antonio. It was beyond chilling. None of the 3 of us could move a single muscle, no less think to grab one of the loaded guns right next to us. Here, let me explain to you guys. American Chupacabras are dogs with mange, basically, and Puerto Rican Chupacabras are aliens. So everyone, now we're all caught up. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm Puerto Rican and 21 years old. I grew up terrified of this creature. My grandmother told me so many stories as a child. I also remember sometime in the early 2000s, local news were reporting a large search for the Chupacabra, with people riding their horses in the countryside. It makes me happy to see it covered in this channel. Cool. The Boston Ranger 1970. I've seen the Chupacabra twice when I lived in Puerto Rico, in the town of San Sebastian. And I don't care if people believe it or not. I know what I saw in those images are in my mind for the rest of my life. Shout out to Bob Gimlin. His channel's phenomenal. Sleep paralysis. Aw, man. It seems more occurrences than not with sleep paralysis that I've heard. There winds up being some sort of paranormal experience with it. It's weird. Alright, Robert J. Robert Jr. Let's see. My sister had an entity following her as a teenager that we later thought was our deceased grandfather, who we'd never met because he passed before either of us were born. One day I was sitting on the couch, and my sister walked past me to go into her room, and I saw a tall, shadowy figure following directly behind her. At first, I thought I was seeing things, but something felt really odd, and I couldn't let it go. So I went into her room to tell her. She turned around to look at me and had tears in her eyes, and I said, "I'm pretty sure I just saw something follow you in here," and she immediately responded, "I know. I've had a few other paranormal things happen aside from this, but this story is too similar to what I've experienced that I thought I would share." That's awesome. Terrifying, but awesome. Skippy. Sounds like you had a night terror. I had one in Singapore 40 years ago, and I will never forget it. Night terrors occur usually during waking or falling asleep. Your body is paralyzed, and you experience hallucinations which feel very real. Usually, the hallucinations are that someone is in your room. My experience is horrifying. I woke up to see the shadow of a huge man crossing the end of my bed. He turned around and saw me. Then he leaned across my bed and put his hand around my neck, whispering, "You're gonna miss me." I was terrified, but I was so frozen that I couldn't move. I silently said the Lord's Prayer and got the strength to suddenly sit up, and I pushed him out of the way. You should read articles about night terrors. They will help you understand what happened to you. They seem so real at the time, and you never forget them. I had night terrors. I just used to hit stuff though. I think one time I stretched out and hit the wall, freaked out, and then staying the night at people's houses, and I'd wake up and their nose were bleeding. They're all like, "You hit me in the nose." So I think that happened 2 or 3 times. And then the 4th time I hit the wall, and then that's the last time I remember. So it's night terrors, or it was pent-up frustration. It's not sounding like night terrors. Maybe I didn't have night terrors. CJ, I've been to sleep paralysis so many times that now it usually doesn't freak me out. It's incredibly hard to shake yourself awake, though. Somehow, I'm always in a variation of my room that isn't the same, and it doesn't clue me in that I'm in a different universe/frame of mind. I will be a teenager in my childhood room trying to wake myself up because I know that I'm in sleep paralysis mode. I'm usually back in time, but in my bed trying to make myself wake up. There's been a few times where I was so certain the TV was on, or that I had said something or done something that completely was in my mind. When I was younger, I used to have goblins that would sit on my chest. Oh no, here are the gnomes again. They had a big chessboard on my chest, and they would just observe me. The first few times it happened, I was so terrified that the throbbing in my neck was unbearable. Now when it happens, I don't freak out. Sometimes I try to let it ride through to fall asleep. Frequently, though, I have to do my best to sit up, and that will be enough to rush me out of it. But I will have memories of sitting up and jerking out of sleep paralysis, only to find out that it was all a hallucination, and I'm still stuck in my bed. Bomb.com. This reminds me of something that happened to me and my brother at a rental house. For 2 nights, my brother said he saw a girl hanging over our stairs by a rope around her neck. I didn't believe him until I walked past those stairs at night and felt something tug at my hair from behind. He was the only one who experienced anything like that until then, and my parents didn't even know about it until much later on. Oh man, goosebumps. Creepy. Alright, I'm wrapping it up there. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and Sly here. It was a blast. Thank you guys. You have a great night.